We'll get some comments.
All right, we are live. Here we are, LinkedIn Live. Dave Manica, Chris Morrison, Agile Market Entry via Veris.
Yep. Launching disruptive technology.
That's right. How you doing, Mr. Chris? How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I've been sitting here working on my desk, so it's good to get on a conference call or a podcast and have some interaction because I've been kind of heads down on stuff all morning long.
All right. So we usually just spend a few minutes making sure all the connections between StreamYard and YouTube and LinkedIn are working well. So we'll just probably spend another 10 seconds chatting and we'll jump into it. But I guess really what's going to happen here, Chris, is I get to be the leader. I stole the show.
This one's yours. I'm just here to fill in the blanks.
I took the show. I stole the show from Chris. All right, let's jump into it then. Right? You ready to go? Ready to go, old man?
I'm ready, David.
I love it. So
where do you want to take us?
Take us to what do you call it? Puerto Rico is where I really want to go. Okay. VP of Sales dilemma. So we're talking about Agile Market Entry. We're talking about disruptive products, right?
Yep.
So Chris is the kingpin here. He built the Agile Market Entry model. I mean, he understands this left, right, and center. And what we really wanted to do is start talking to larger companies, directors, VPs of sales, to really say, folks, you're the ones that are getting torn to shreds with disruptive products. Chris, you know that, right? We see it all over the place.
Well, they're either getting torn to shreds one way or the other. Either they're getting disrupted by startups coming in and disrupting their world, or they're getting handed a product from from their R&D folks that's disruptive and they don't have a sales model to execute against. So they're getting torn up either way.
Perfect. I love it. That's right. And so what we're really saying in our first session on this is we started talking about the pain, right? But this session, we really wanted to get into the fact that there is a solution for VPs of sales, regardless of company size, really. But the bigger companies, this is more important, that can work to your advantage so you don't end up getting the boot and the blame for when the disruptive product doesn't sell.
Yeah, and I think the big companies have a huge advantage over the smaller companies that are disrupting them. And one is they have the resources that the smaller companies don't have. And the second thing is they have the market relationships already.
Yeah.
Those two things should make the big companies winners 100% of the time, but they're not. And that's what we're going to talk about.
And it's so funny how that happens, right? It's just so funny that, they have this huge advantage, yet it doesn't work out. So let's get into the framework. So the first thing we want to get into is we want to talk about a term called bimodal. And bimodal, BI, then modal. What this means is you got a kind of a two-headed monster.
Yep.
So I'm one thing, right, Chris? But then I'm operating in two different ways. Would you say that's a good definition of bimodal?
Well, bimodal is your word, so that works for me. It certainly is exactly the way I think Agile Market Entry should be run from in the sales teams.
Okay.
It's definitely there. So the Agile Market Entry sales framework and your traditional sales framework, the Agile Market Entry team and the traditional team should be operating side by side, delivering to different purposes.
And my thought was, this is why I think clients didn't quite understand it in some cases. I think VPs of sales are thinking, okay, I got to teach all my people how to do this. And the answer is absolutely not. What you have to start believing in is that you have to run a bimodal organization.
If they're gonna have disruptive technologies that their sales teams are bringing to market, or they're buying technologies, acquiring companies that disruptive technologies that they have to bring into their sales team, they have to do this. If they don't, it'll fail.
So what we're going to get into is the two sides. We're not even going to talk about the normal side. The normal side is you VP of sale, you get it. You hired your outbound, your inbound, whatever structure you have in place. You have your ICP, you have your scripts, you have your full sales process, you have your pipeline, you get all your reports out of Salesforce. That's not our purview in this meeting, in this conversation.
No, those products you keep running that way. Those are products that are already in the execution stage. You already have your repeatable sales process that you're executing against. And that's basically what every VP of sales and every sales rep has been trained on how to operate inside that model.
And then we also want to say, as we get into bimodal, that one side isn't more important than the other. Because this is what happens when you kind of break this model out. Sometimes that one side thinks it's more important than the other. They have to be seen as valuable in and of themselves, doing the things that they're supposed to be doing in order for this to work, because the regular team has to deliver to have the money so this team can operate till they get to the money. And then this team is just going to get the repeatable process and just start selling something new once they got the repeatable process.
Correct. So you need, if you're going to do disruptive, if you're going to sell disruptive products and existing products, which every company has, you have to have both. I wouldn't even categorize it as one being important or other. They're just in two entirely different things.
Yeah, I agree, but you know how people are. Oh, I'm on this team instead of that team. You know, the Sneetches with Dr. Seuss. I have stars on my Star Belly Sneetches. You don't, so I'm more important. The Tiger team. I want to be on the. I mean, you're not a big company guy, so sometimes you don't get this. But man, when you get into these type of structures, you get a lot of politics going. You get people thinking I'm better than you because I'm over here. I mean, the VP of Sales has really got to go into this mentality that they are doing different things, but they are equal.
I won't even categorize them as equal or important or less important. They're equal in the perspective that if you want to do disruption, you have to have a team that a sales team to go through the sales process to bring a disruptive technology to the market. And then at some point in time, once you get that, once you discover how to sell into that market, then you hand that sales model along with the product over to your traditional sales team that's operating at scale or operating in the execution mode instead of the discovery mode.
So basically, built to last, Jim Collins and the team, it's an and, it's not an or.
Well, David, it goes back to Jim Collins. This goes back to customer discovery. This goes back to Clay Christensen, jobs to be done. This goes back to the Agile, the lean startup, all that stuff. This is the piece that no one ever has gotten to yet, which is the sales piece to actually close the loop for actually delivering,
taking it to the final yard. It's like the last mile, the final yard. I mean, you've got the internet stuff going on now because the last mile of telecommunications was finally figured out. Yeah. Until they figured it out, you weren't watching TV over your phone or over IP. And the same thing here is you big company, you're going to continue to get disrupted until you realize that this last mile with taking disruption to the customer has to be done in a different way, but within the same structure. That's what we're saying.
Correct.
And it's
the companies that embrace this and figure it out, it's going to be a huge competitive advantage for them.
Huge. Absolutely.
I mean, it's going to have an impact. And we've talked about this before. It just doesn't have an impact on the product line you're launching. It has an impact across your whole product, your whole product portfolio.
And I have a small case study for the company I owned where we did this. You have multiple case studies as well, but that's not for this session. Let's get into the nuts and bolts. So
yeah, let's dive into it, Dave.
First off, this is not a business development team. This is not a sales enablement team.
It's not a business development team. It's not a sales team. It's not extensive R&D. This is the sales process for bringing a disruptive technology to market.
These are salespeople, but with different skills.
It's a salespeople with different skill set. This is about closing new deals and new business. So it's purely a sales activity, David.
That's right.
And it has to be done by experienced salespeople.
They just have to. So let's talk about the staffing issues, because if you're a really good VP of sales, your number one job is talent.
Yes. Yes.
So when I'm going to a new place that has a repeatable sales process, I'm looking for people that know the industry, know my repeatable sales process, will want to fit into that process and hit the ground running.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Right.
That's not the case over here. So people, staffing. Me, VP of sales, I want to staff this team. What am I thinking about, Chris?
So first of all, the first thing you have to confront is this is a different sales skill set than your traditional salesperson. A traditional salesperson, what they do is they execute a sales process, a proven sales process you already have. So when you bring in a salesperson on board them, you train them in what your existing sales process is. who the target is, what the messaging and what the sales cycle is, how to deliver it, and then how to close sales, and then turn it over to the delivery team and the customer satisfaction.
That's right. Very systematic. You follow a numbers process. You do all the churns, and you'll make money.
And you make money. And what you do is, and then you manage the team to execute that process over and over again. That's
all right. Good. So we know that. So let's look at this team. So what is I'm VP of Sales. What do I need to be looking for?
You and I talked about this in but at a couple different ways to look at it. One is you're looking for your cowboys, rebels, and troublemakers.
All right. So that sets the tone right off the bat. Do you want a cowboy, rebel, and troublemaker on your other side?
I
don't want them on my repeatable sales side because they're going to drive me crazy.
They always drive the VP of Sales because they're the folks that are going off a reservation. They're calling on different sales points. They're creating content, or they're
almost like they're bored and they want to do other things.
They're bothering you. They're going back and bugging R&D about what's coming out next because they're always looking at how to create that next thing.
So actually, we're going to tap into that in this team. We're going to say that's part of what we want.
That's what you're looking for. You're looking for your cowboys, rebels, and troublemakers, and they're usually either very high performers or solid performers. They could be in any of those buckets, but they're always the ones that are trying to they'll challenge the VP of Sales. They'll be the one that'll stand up a meeting and say, "Hey, this really isn't working. What if we try to do this?"
And you want that
type of mentality. And there's the easiest thing, David. There's a great article out there written by Mark Leslie and Charles Holloway. If you Google it, it's a Harvard Business Review article called the Learning Sales Curve, or the Sales Learning Curve. Brilliant article. They refer to these reps as Renaissance reps, and fundamentally, they're kind of they have the sales mentality, so they know how to close sales. But they also have this creative, restless side that always is having them try something new or create something new or call a different. That's what's driving them. That's what drives their sales managers crazy.
So here's the thing that's interesting. Now, why we call it bimodal is it's different, right? It's similar, but it's important, but different. The metrics and leadership on this side, the systematic side, is going to be significantly different than the metrics and the leadership on this side.
Yes. And then we're kind of shifting.
I just threw that. So the staffing scenario, what we're saying is rebels, cowboys, what was the other one?
Rebels. And just step back on that for just a brief moment here. I've found that traditionally there are a small percentage, if you have a sales force of 20 people, there's probably 2, maybe 3 of these on your sales team. And if I talk to a VP of Sales, they always know who they are.
And we debate this a little bit because I think that you might even have to go maybe to the smaller company in your industry to find them. Maybe
you might have to.
Maybe they're a disgruntled product manager who wants to make more money, who's always had a customer mindset.
Yep, they might be.
Well, we debate that, right? I hear what you're saying, but the ultimate thing is they got to be thinkers. They got to be.
Well, they got to be thinkers. They got to be creative thinkers. They've got to be They got to be a little bit of a risk taker. They've got to be a challenger. They got to be a bit of a challenger. Now, the other thing that's different about, and we'll get to this even more, but they pretty much have to be a team player too. That's kind of the anomaly that's hard to find.
Okay.
But that's a whole nother conversation.
But that's okay. But you got to overlay that because you just can't, you can't bring a full-blown entrepreneur in because my entrepreneur mindset person, because entrepreneurs are control freaks.
Yes.
And that's okay to be a control freak if you're an entrepreneur. You can't be a control freak in this role. I want entrepreneurial characteristics.
A very high entrepreneurial characteristics role, but it's in this case they're a little bit different because of how they operate. They do have to follow. They have to be they have to be willing to follow a little bit, but they're not going to follow all the rules.
But follow number one would be that this VP of Sales understands how to give them the right compensation. So we know that salespeople are driven by compensation.
So, and let's talk. Yeah, they're driven by compensation. This one, and we got to look back. What's the goal of this team? We got to reel it back and figure out what the goal of this team is. And the goal
So this VP of sales has to set that goal. They have to understand what they're trying to achieve.
Correct. And it's pretty simple. It's not revenue. So what the goal of this team is getting to scale as efficiently as possible and figuring out the sales model that is going to be repeatable. I'd say the repeatable sales model that is going to allow a whole sales organization to take a product to scale. So it's actually discovering the repeatable sales process. That's what the goal of this team is. So the goal is not revenue. It's not getting revenue. And oftentimes, if you incentivize this team by revenue, it takes them off the discovery mode that they have to be in. They automatically go in execution mode and try to close stuff. And that's not the idea at this stage. The key at this stage is discovering the repeatable sales process that the broader sales team can execute against to take a product to scale.
So any thoughts as you start processing, as you talk to people, some thoughts on compensation models?
Yeah, so I've got a bunch of thoughts on that. One is it depends on the type of company. Is it a startup company? Well, so first of all, it's you've got to give. Well, first of all, let's look at it this way. This is the riskiest sales out there. So you got to compensate for risk. So you got to adjust your balance between variable compensation and fixed compensation for the risk here. And the reason I say it's the riskiest is because they don't have a sales model to execute against, so they don't know what to execute. So they're discovering it, and they got to figure that out. So that's why it's risky. So you got to compensate that way. But the key is the thing that you've got to motivate them on is getting the sales plan and the sales model over the sales team to scale against as quickly as possible. So discovery. So it's a time-based motivation is what you should be motivating them by instead of a revenue-based motivation.
Be a repeatable process and then give it to the salespeople to start selling. Let me throw this at you. As I was thinking more about the process, and we talk about this a lot, the insurance industry has a wonderful benefit that once you reach scale, you just make money in your sleep. You keep making money off the people. Why couldn't the compensation plan be the money that's made off the customers that these folks find in the entry process?
So,
or is that too revenue focused too? Is that too?
Well, it depends what you do with this team. I mean, if I were in a startup, you could do it that way because this team could carry on and continue selling to those customers forever.
But even if you pass it over, it's like a product manager. So when I was a product manager, I made a small percentage on every sale of the stuff I built. And it was a wonderful model because I did all the upfront work and I was motivated to find the stuff that people wanted so that I would get the residual income.
Yeah, I understand that, David. The challenge.
No, tell me. I understand that, David.
No, that's it. The challenge with that is that's a tough model to pitch in the big companies these days. It's just.
I know it sucks though, but residual, it's a variable cost model that drives somebody really thinking strategically about what's the long term. Because what you say is so great on this one. Why you don't want revenue is one of the troublemakers is going to go and just find a big deal that's outside the scope.
Yeah.
And they're going to just get wrapped up in that deal. It's going to be on their pipeline. Everybody's going to be all excited. They're looking at it, and you've learned nothing.
You learn nothing in that.
And it's a one-off. And I've seen this happen at one of my startups, which we needed to make revenue. We had them run with something. We stopped learning on the other stuff we were trying to sell just to try to close that deal.
You see it all the time. And this is why the goal of getting revenue is not the right goal at this stage of the market development process. At this stage, the goal is, so let's step back another step. If you look at the revenue curve if you look at the revenue curve for a product, it starts out flat, then you hit the inflection point at scale, Amazon, Airbnb, Google, they go crazy. And then it's a straight rock ship and then flattens out. So at this early stage, revenue is not going to drive the valuation. Even a double, triple, quadruple your revenue, it's not going to drive valuation. What's going to drive valuation is getting to the inflection point in the scale.
Can you get there quicker? Possible. And do you think a team like this can get there? The key is this team, we believe this team will get you there faster.
So let me comment on that. So one is they will absolutely get you there faster than using an existing sales framework, because what will end up happening on existing is that flatness of the curve is you'll extend it.
And it might never happen because you might have missed the inflection point.
And most times a lot of times it never happens. But
yeah,
so you will always shorten it. Now, let's look at
it. Don't you shorten the time to this isn't going to work?
You will do that too, which is what you want to do. Yeah,
which is what you want.
Which is what you want, right?
Okay, keep going.
You'll figure, or what you'll do. So it's a discovery process, Dave. This is a scientific method. So you build a hypothesis, then you build hypothesis around who your market entry point is into the marketplace, who your beachhead market is. When you start selling, you prove, validate, or invalidate that hypothesis. If your hypothesis going in that your market entry point doesn't turn out, which is probably a high probability that your market entry point before you actually start selling to what it is after you sign, it's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to go back and start over and come up with another hypothesis of where your market entry point. But you got to think about the whole.
And that's where they work as a team, because they don't have to pop back into marketing. They might have to pop back into research and development with the information that they gather.
All that stuff. And that's also why this is a sales process. All this data that's going to inform your market entry point, your messaging, your lead generation tactics, everything that marketing needs to get you those leads is going to be dependent upon who you're closed and how you sell, who you're selling to and how you close. It's going to be depending on what you learn from those first 5, 10, 15, 50 customers is going to inform your whole front end of your marketing as well as your sales process. So that's it. Okay. So one thing, David, here is, yes, it's going to shorten your time to scale.
Yep.
But on the other side of the coin, to go through the process, and it's mainly a sequential process. You got to figure out who your market entry point is and what your target ICP is before you can figure out the messaging to reach out to them, before you can figure out your lead generation tactics.
So let's go ahead and stop for a second. So let's not scare the VP of sales. We want to get some pragmatism here. So we hit on the fact that you have to have a different team. We hit on the fact that you have to have a different compensation model. We banged on some of those compensation models. The team, I think,
we didn't talk about it, but you have to have a different North Star too, right?
So let's talk about leadership and management then.
Yes.
Because when I started on the leadership management side, I said, look, when I'm managing a salesperson, let's review your pipeline. What's your call metrics? What's your meeting metrics? What's your pipeline? What's your pipeline close? Okay, go do. Okay, what's your call metrics? What's your email metrics? What's your pipeline say? What's your close rate? Oh, go do. That's how you manage the sales team.
Yeah,
with some sales coaching, and you get on calls and all that stuff, and basically you go.
Right.
You're not doing that here.
Well, you don't have any of that here. You don't have a pipeline.
So here it is. I'm a VP of sales. This is what I'm normally used to. What do I do with all these idiots? Because that's what they got a bunch of lunatics running around.
So so first of all, you don't have so the biggest mistake you can do is take a disruptive product and hand it to your whole sales team.
We already got there. Yeah. So now I got a bunch of I drank your Kool-Aid, brother. Now I got a bunch of crazies running around.
Dave, say you have 3 to 5 sales reps that are your Agile Market launch team, your special forces sales team that are the right personalities for doing this. What do? You tell them what your hypothesis is. Here's who I think our call point is, right? Here's what I think the messaging is. Okay, let's start selling into that. And the beauty of being in a big company, you probably have those people in your existing customer base yet. So you have a place to start.
So now I sniffed out something in the pragmatic world. The VP of sales really does need to take some training. The VP of sales is going to have to take some training about the North Star, the guidance,
and shifting from the execution to the discovery mindset. You know, the fundamental thing here of all of this, Dave, is shifting from an execution mindset to a discovery mindset.
Yeah.
Everybody
says bimodal was a hot thing back in the early 2000s. Bimodal CMO, bimodal CIO. So, I throw this bimodal thing at you. And of course, the first thing people say is, oh, God. But the reality is something's got to give, because you can't it's really hard just to create a new group. Oh, I'm going to create an Agile Market Entry new group. Yeah. I could just see catastrophe all over that. infighting, moaning.
Oh,
What are they doing? Why did they call my customer?
Yeah.
Right? Why are they doing that? They shouldn't be calling my customer. That's my customer, right? I mean, you can't, although logically you think you might want to create, you really can't, right? I mean, is it possible?
Well, first of all, this is why the leadership has to be on board, right?
Yeah.
So in a startup, when I do this, I'm it. I'm doing all of this. And this is what I've done for the last 30, 40 years. I'm doing all this. So I don't have to think about the politics. I got to think about the politics with myself, right?
Yep.
So I don't have to deal with that. But this is why in a big company, it has to be led by leadership because they have to lead it and do it. And then this is where compensation becomes important. This is where how you manage the team becomes important. So you don't create these things. But here's the bottom line: if you're going to do disruption, and if you're going to be able to operate in the disruptive world, and you want to talk about the world being disrupted, AI is going to completely disrupt all of our world.
We know that. Yeah, it's part of why we're trying to train this. We're trying to
get operate in this world. I mean, to me, these VP of sales and big companies have no choice but embrace this and figure out how to do it. Because if they don't, they're not going to be, their company's not going to be around in the next 5 or 10 years because it's
know what? At the end of the day, sales might be the only thing going around. So you better have the most talented person as your VP of sales because they're going to have to be the most talented person, even more so than maybe even the product person. People think the product person or the R&D people are most talented. I don't know, man.
Well, from a statistical standpoint, this piece of the puzzle is the hardest thing in business to do. I mean, this is if you look at where
funny.
If you look at where businesses fail, they fail from the launch to scale stage of the market development process.
The last mile of the deal. It's
that's always the hardest thing to do.
Everybody talks about developing that you can build the product. That's the easy stuff, man. I can come up with marketing personas. And I can come up with the value proposition. That's all easy stuff. I mean, I can do some focus groups and case studies. That's all easy stuff.
Relative to what we're talking about, that is the easy stuff. And you don't have to believe me, it's the hardest stuff. All you got to do is look at the statistics of where failure lives in companies, and this is where it lives, period. So
what we're trying to do at Via Veris and what we're trying to do with Agile Market Entry now, folks, is we're really trying to say, big company VP of sales, you need us.
Yeah.
And you in this bimodal scenario is probably the best option you have to bring a skilled Agile Market Entry team into your organization.
Yep.
And first, you're going to need some training to understand the mindset shifts.
Yep.
Compensation changes, hiring strategy changes, management structure changes.
Yep.
And then you have to execute. And in execution, it's good to train the team on how to do the discovery.
Yep. Yeah, right.
Because there is some repeatable processes for doing the discovery, right?
Well, there is. Yes. I kind of think about practices versus principles. The principles are repeatable.
Yeah.
The underlying principles are repeatable. The practices always have to be adjusted to some.
Of course, because there's going to be a lot more sway. And then you're not going to take a script and hire somebody who's very intelligent from the Philippines who knows nothing about your customer to do this.
But the things that you and I are talking about, the thinking, the underlying principles, the people you put on the team, how you manage them, you're right. How you incentivize them. How you manage what their goals are. Those things are all repeatable. Once you have a team that knows how to manage through that process, that team can do it with this product. Well, they can help you do the early customer discovery work to de-risk products before they come to market. Work with their R&D on that on the front end. They can help launch disruptive technologies, whether they're built in-house or whether they're acquired in.
Yep.
And here's, I think, where the real can have a huge impact, like overnight, very quickly, is they can help you get products that you've struggled with that are disruptive technologies that you've applied these traditional old.
You can go back to the garage and maybe pull something out and say, I bet you if we follow this process, your old Fred Sanford model. Chris and I used to joke that, there's a huge warehouse of dead med tech devices that probably would have sold, but they weren't taking it to market right.
I would love to get in companies and start digging through their garage on the products they put on the shelves, because
and then running it through this and seeing, hey, maybe you've missed something.
Oh, I guarantee you. I mean, if they have 10, there's probably 1 or 2 of them that they missed on this that would have a huge impact.
Just keep hearing the Sanford and Son theme in my head, but I'm not going to sing it because I'll embarrass you on your show since I stole it. With that said, any last minute chirping before we take off?
No, I think we've hit on a lot of the key things on, the fundamental components that you have to do this. The last thing I want to say, David, and I get why from a political standpoint and from a culture standpoint, this can be hard. This doesn't have to be hard. This can be a very small, agile team if they're given the right support from management and let to do their job, can have a huge impact and doesn't have to cause troubles across the organization. It doesn't have to be. And if you have leadership on this team, it won't. All
right, we'll have a lot more conversation about this going forward. Thank you, sir.
Good session, David. Enjoy the rest of your day. I know you got some traveling coming up, so be safe, man.
Thank you, brother.